Hello, this is Pretty Guardian, and for today's video, I am excited to be talking to you about 5 indie RPGs that you should keep an eye on. These are all really just special games that I think everyone should hear about, so if you're a fan of this genre, definitely go and check them out. At number 1 on my list is the game that I've been playing for the past few weeks. It is called Rise of the Third Power. So this one is a very traditional turn-based combat sort of JRPG. It has 16-bit style graphics. I just love how they've done an amazing job of creating this compelling little world for us to explore. It has kind of a big map that opens up to various degrees throughout the game. It's a very narrative-driven game, so if you like a good story, there's definitely some beats in there to keep you engaged. It's nothing transcendent, but overall, it's just really well done. The developer is a group called Stegosoft Games, and they had previously done a game called RFL, which I had played this extended demo of way back in the day. And it actually had this MIDI version of Gangster's Paradise as one of the songs in this dungeon that you were playing through. And I just thought it was this really fun attempt from an indie developer to make a game. So then when I hear about Rise of the Third Power, which is made by the same developer, I'm like, you know what? If their first attempt is this good, I can only imagine how good their second attempt is going to be after having all the experience that they built from making that first game. And for me, they didn't disappoint. I thought that the pixel art was beautiful. There were a lot of interesting vistas to look at. The character design is really well done. And then walking around the different maps, one thing that I really look at is does the environment move? Do NPCs walk around? Do the trees bristle a little bit in the wind? And they've mostly nailed that. There are little particle effects and stuff that they've included that I think give it a lot of polish, but I would have liked to see the grass maybe move a little bit or that sort of thing. So it's kind of in between on that aspect for me. Like I said, still a lot of beautiful areas to explore if you like that sort of 16-bit art style. Combat is turn-based and I have a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun with their combat system. It does have some of its own unique little intricacies to it. For example, there is a sundering system where if you have an armored character, you can break their armor and then you're able to do more damage to them. And then there's also group attacks where you can partner with a different character to do an ultimate attack. And depending on who's in your party and your experience with them, you're able to kind of do some different moves and maneuvers that way. So overall, I just thought it was a really great game. Good graphics for what they are, good storyline, good combat. Definitely one that I would recommend that you check out. At number 2 on my list is the game Geneforge. So Geneforge is the latest game from Spiderweb Software and their developer, Jeff Vogel. I am a huge fan of his. He often talks about his experiences with game development going way back in the day and how kind of before Baldur's Gate, there weren't really a huge number of CRPGs on the market. So when he first started making games, he was making games that he himself would want to play. So all of his games kind of have these big overarching storylines. You're usually getting at least 50 plus hours of gameplay out of the game. And even though graphically it's nothing amazing, in his own words, he's kind of said, you know what, but you can tell that this is a dragon or this is the floor and that's the wall and this is the sword. You do still have enough of a graphical system in place that it's not just a text-based game. You're actually engaging with the icons in the world that he's built for you. So Geneforge is very interesting because you take on the role of a mage who is able to combine DNA and create these different monsters that you can use to battle across this world. So it almost has a Pokemon monster collecting sort of aspect to it, but it's just very unique in the sense that it combines his traditional RPG gameplay with these mechanics of being able to create your own monsters. So Geneforge is definitely one that I would recommend that you check out. One of the cool things that Jeff Vogel does with most of his games is that they have these really long demos. So you're able to download the demo for free and try and experience this game for yourself. You usually get 20 plus hours of gameplay alone from the demo. At number 3 on my list, we have the game Edge of Eternity. This is an indie RPG that I don't think that I could like sing enough praises for. I think that the world is very beautiful. They have these incredible, almost like breathtaking open world environments. It had a really engaging storyline from start to finish. I was interested in this world and these characters and what they were going through. It almost has I wanted to say that it has a post-apocalyptic vibe to it, but it actually almost feels like you're playing through the apocalypse itself. There are these aliens that have come to the planet and you're fighting war with them, but then there's kind of different factions within the planet that are all doing their own maneuvering and different issues that spring up. For example, this disease called the corrosion that is kind of turning people into monsters and killing them. So there's this like pandemic aspect to it that I don't know is maybe timely or untimely depending on where you're coming from. To me, there are two like big weaknesses that I really experienced with this game. First off, I think that the main storyline, it kind of hits a point where I think they just wanted to wrap things up really quickly, and the game could probably use another about 5 to 10 hours of gameplay, just a couple more dungeons and a little bit more story to wrap up some of the loose ends that they quickly shut together there at the end. In some ways, it seemed like they were trying to create a project that was maybe bigger than what they could manage for a first game. And then while I thought the graphics were beautiful, it's obviously not a AAA game. So there are some issues with the character models and with some of the animations. Some people kind of describe them as clunky, and maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. I think it's important to remember though that this game was made by a team of less than 10 people. And for that level of like indie game, I don't think that I've seen anything else on the market. I've never seen a game produced by less than 10 people that have this much gameplay, this big of a world, these beautiful graphics, and just kind of all the systems that they've created and how they mesh together. For example, the game has crafting, the game has these Nekaru like cat mounts that you can ride around on. There's just a lot of really interesting stuff in this world. And I am a big fan of these developers. They call themselves Midgar Studios. I'm very eager to see what they come out with next. Speaking of games that are kind of like Pokemon, at number 4 on my list is the game Coramon. I've been kind of eyeballing this little pixel graphic masterpiece from afar for a long time. And when it finally had its full release on PC, I quickly installed that game and have been loving it ever since. In this one, it's very much like Pokemon, where you walk through the tall grass and monsters appear and you fight them, weaken them, and then you throw out a little trap that captures them. The game does have some slight different framings of that, as far as like you're not really a Pokemon trainer, you're more a battle researcher. So you're part of this like science organization, you're researching these Coramon. Here is my deal with Pokemon. I don't think that there was anything wrong with the older Pokemon games. They were excellent games. Even up to Pokemon XY, I thoroughly enjoyed them. And to see the huge departures that Game Freak has taken from that traditional formula has been really disheartening to me. So when I see a lot of these little indie games like Coramon pop up that give you that classic Pokemon experience so well, to me, it's just a huge reminder of why Game Freak shouldn't have tried to switch it up so much in the first place. Coramon doesn't really do anything amazing that we haven't seen before. There are some little specifics to their systems. For example, when you're catching Pokemon, their shiny system, your Pokemon can be like normal or special or rare or whatever. There is actually like a difference to its stats and everything based on its rarity. So there are times in the game where you will just start farming and trying to get that like best possible Coramon before you move on to the next area. And for me, that was kind of a fun little part of the gameplay. It kind of front loads that EV-IV stat experience for you, but there are some other little specifics to the gameplay as well. Overall, to me, this is just like a lighthearted, fun game. It has a little bit of story, some combat, some good Pokemon Coramon catching mechanics in there, and overall it combines into a really fun game. So definitely one worth checking out. And last but not least on my list is number 5, Solasta, Crown of the Magister. So this is a fun CRPG style game where it really shines is in the combat. They've put in a lot of interesting mechanics here to give you a very like turn-based Divinity Original Sins 2 sort of vibe, but it adheres much closer to like traditional D&D mechanics. When I first played this game, it was at their like first launch or whatever. And the thing that I noticed right away is how much of like a true to D&D experience I was getting. It really did feel like I was like meeting these adventurers and having that sort of tabletop experience. And even in the combat, you can see that very well reflected. So I definitely give them big props for that. When I first played the game, there were some issues with bugs and then just like the overall polish. You could kind of tell that this was a more indie experience compared to something like Divinity Original Sin 2, where Larian is obviously a much bigger studio. Now, however, I think Solasta is definitely a game that's worth revisiting. They've been out for a little over a year now, so they've had time to add some DLC, really polish up the game, and it's definitely a very full and rich experience, particularly if you like that strategic combat. And so that is my list of 5 indie RPGs to keep an eye on. If you know any indie RPG gems, please feel free to tell me about them in the comment section below. I always love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. That way you'll be the first to know when I'm releasing new content. And you know, I love you so much. So I will see you in the next one. Until then, this is Pretty Guardian, logging out.